Today is Thursday, August the 29th. This is The Drill. And thank you very much. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States of America. All the other so-called conservatives are conservative because the left tells them so, tells them that they're left, and I'm the only one that's a conservative because I know I'm a conservative, because I make the presumption for the status quo. So, British healthcare system is no such thing. Another good reason for not having the single-payer system is what we've seen with British healthcare over the past couple of years, where small children have been left to die by the British healthcare system. They didn't have an answer for a particular life-threatening ailment that these children had. And so they basically told the parents, go home, make your kid comfortable, here's some pain medication or whatever, and let the child die. We're not going to do anything heroic to try to keep the child alive. Okay, fair enough. If you don't have the technology or the skills or the knowledge to fix somebody, you don't. There's nothing you can do about that. But when somebody in the United States says, hey, Mr. and Miss Smith, we have a potential treatment for your child that may save your child's life. Why don't you bring the child over here? We'll pay for all expenses, and we'll treat the child and, possibly save the child's life, and we'll actually get to learn more about this particular disease. And then the British healthcare system says to the parents, Mr. and Ms. Smith, no, you don't. You will not go to the United States. You will not take your child over there, because if you do, when you come back, you will be arrested and prosecuted. Okay? And so at first you might think, well, okay, the British healthcare system has to, if it's going to be a single-payer system, you can't have people running off all over the world trying to defeat the system. Trying to beat the system, so to speak. Because the whole idea of it is to be fair. Everybody's supposed to be subject to the same health care, the same crappy lack of health care that everyone else is. Everybody has the same. But it's BS. We all know that it's BS. That if the Queen's grandchildren or great-grandchildren had such an affliction as these commoner parents did, that the crown would move heaven and earth to make sure that child was treated and given every option and every shot at survival. And we also know that everybody in the Labour or Conservative Party, whichever one happens to be ruling right now, is Prime Minister May, I believe is her name, and her children, her grandchildren. Again, the same thing. Nobody is going to tell the politicians, the members of Parliament, the Prime Minister, the Minister of the Exchequer, etc., or the members of the royal household. No, they're not going to do it. So what you end up with is not a fair system at all. You end up with a system for the elites. We have a bunch of elites that get the better health care, and then you have the common people that end up with crap, that have to stand in line and wait so that the government, or actually the political party in charge, can tell them, no, go home and die. And what makes this particularly odious is, again, the fact that they don't have political clout. And that's the thing, is it comes down to there's not going to be any fair system of healthcare. Somebody's going to be kind of squeezed out. There's going to be people that are going to have a difficult time of it. And there's going to always be people that are going to have an easier time of it, going to have access to more treatments. The question is, on what basis? Are they going to have it on the basis of money, or are they going to have it on the basis of political and social power? And if I have to choose between the two, I'd rather go with money, because I can beg, borrow, or steal money. Political power, not so. Okay, you're either in good, you either have one of your relatives or a close friend as a member of Congress or a senator or working in the administration, or you don't. And if you don't, guess what? You get to suck hind tit. You get zero. You get nothing. So, again, another good reason not to have single-payer health care in the United States, because all you're going to do is change a system that is not equal based on money to a system that is not equal based on power. Okay, when we come back, a little bit of Ayn Rand. Thank you very much. And we're going to the Ayn Rand lexicon. And today's selection is called Byronic View of Existence. There are romanticists whose basic premise, in effect, is that man possesses volition in regard to consciousness, but not to existence, i.e. in regard to his own character and choice of values, but not in regard to the possibility of achieving his goals in the physical world. The distinguishing characteristics of such writers are grand-scale themes and characters, no plots, and an overwhelming sense of tragedy, the sense of a malevolent universe. The chief exponents of this category were poets. The leading one is Byron, whose name has been attached to this particular Byronic view of existence. Its essence is the belief that man must lead a heroic life and fight for his values, even though he is doomed to defeat by a malevolent fate over which he has no control. And this is from the Romantic Manifesto, one of her nonfiction books that's absolutely excellent. And all of this is important, particularly the malevolent and benevolent universe premise, because your view of life is going to determine your socio-psychological activities, how you're going to act and respond to the everyday world. It's going to mean who you choose as friends. It's also going to have an effect on your political outlook, what political party you're most likely to identify or affiliate with, and who you're going to vote for, and what you will support in terms of legislation. If you have a malevolent universe premise and that the universe is a scary place and unknowable, you're more likely to be voting for welfare and abortion than somebody with a benevolent universe premise who is more likely to vote for tax cuts and fewer regulations. So that's the reason that all of this philosophy stuff is important, because eventually what you identify with philosophically is going to affect your politics, who you vote for and what you support. And when we come back, we'll see. Thank you. And so it's going to be Breaking Bad. I'm going to be doing philosophy and Breaking Bad. And so where we left this was about Walt and his killing streaks, that he had killed 8 or 9 people directly and may have been responsible for the deaths indirectly of hundreds more. So, now we're starting, they're going to break it down into going into each individual that Walt killed. First one is Emilio. Walt's first bona fide kill is Emilio. In the series pilot, Walt breaks bad in the worst way imaginable. His effort to raise money for his family in the wake of a diagnosis of likely fatal cancer goes horribly wrong. In deep over his head, he's set upon by street-level drug thugs who intend on holding Jesse and Walt captive to force a demonstration, and presumably to make a quantity of meth they can peddle, of Walt's meth-making skills. Walt, in a panic, cooks up a scheme to win his and Jesse's liberty from the thugs, Emilio and Crazy 8, by basically using a chemical weapon. It works to the extent that Emilio is killed by inhaling the phosphine gas, but Crazy 8 survives the attack. Emilio is Walt's first victim. The question is of what? Walt is directly responsible for Emilio's death. He's both the legal and actual agent of his demise. But is Walt's killing justifiable in some moral way or in some legal way so that it isn't a murder? In other words, for what is Walt morally responsible? Dating as far back as Aristotle, philosophers have considered under what conditions an agent might be praised or blamed for an action. Among the criteria he considered relevant, and still argued by many to be relevant today, are the person's capacity for choosing an action. In a sophisticated bank robbery, for example, we'd never think to look for the culprit at a nursery school, because those kids could never pull off the job. The person's motivations for an action. We wouldn't hold Johnny morally responsible for kicking the ball into Sally's face on the playground if it was an accident. On the other hand, if Johnny's motive or intention was in fact to hurt Sally, then we would see this as immoral in some way and punish him accordingly. The consequences of the action. Justice still needs to be served, and someone has to pay for damages that result from an automobile accident. A true accident, not due to a drunk driver, but an honest mistake, even though we know it was an accident. Also, if someone commits a crime that has multiple bad consequences, like many people died in the explosion you caused with your bomb, or a whole lot of money was stolen from a whole lot of people in your credit card scam, then we punish that person more severely. The justification for an action. What's meant here is really the moral theory or rule that one uses to justify an action, complete with rational argument and explanation. For example, you might use the moral rule that says you should never lie as your justification when you actually tell the truth, or an interrogator might use a great good end justifies a little evil means to attain that end when torturing someone who knows where a bomb is located that will soon go off, killing hundreds of people. More recently, debates about the truth of determinism, according to which the universe unfolds as it does regardless of our supposed choices, have complicated issues of moral responsibility. But a dominant theme has emerged with compatibilism, which holds that assigning guilt is still compatible with a deterministic universe, even though it may be true that you are determined by your nature and your nurture to act immorally and break the law. We can still hold you morally responsible and put you in prison, give you therapy, and give you drugs so as to change your motivations so that you'll be determined to act morally and lawfully instead. A final factor to consider both in moral and legal responsibility is the degree to which the actor is the proximate cause of a wrong or harm. Walt is a scientist and probably also a determinist, but he clearly feels guilt about his choices, expressing horror at his role in Emilio's demise, and later both horror and regret, as we shall see. Walt's moral culpability for Emilio's death is arguably reduced given that he was attempting to and did save Jesse and himself from almost certain death. Emilio and Crazy 8 were cold-blooded killers who weren't going to show Walt or Jesse any mercy. Moreover, the stress and duress of the situation in which he and Jesse found themselves further acts to relieve Walt of moral culpability for murder. Killing in self-defense is well known and widely recognized legal and moral justification or excuse, but this justification clearly dissolves with the killing of Crazy 8. And he touches on the idea of the ends justify the means, and that's what the whole series is about. Basically, Walt has decided that he feels sorry for himself because he's gotten potentially terminal cancer, and so he has decided that it's okay to do whatever he wants, whatever he can get away with, in order to try to save his own life and alleviate any suffering on the part of his family. And it's not true. Now, they use the example in here that I thought was interesting of, let's see, a great good end justifies a little evil means to attain that end when torturing somebody who knows where a bomb is located. No, it doesn't. The person that tortures somebody to get the information about a bomb, assuming that torture is wrong, and it goes to the definition of torture, which I don't agree with, in this particular instance. But the point is that if you decide that let's say, violating somebody's rights in order to get information that is going to save a whole bunch of people, you're still wrong for doing that. The question is an issue because what he's doing is conflating justice with ethics. Okay, so the ethical issue is clear. Are you wrong for saying that the ends justify the means? Absolutely, unequivocally. There's no doubt about it. The question then is, what is just here? What is it that this person deserves? What does Walt deserve? What is the person who violates somebody else's rights? Sorry about that. Anyways, it's a matter of justice. And what is it that a person that person deserves? And it goes back to something I've covered before. Two people rob or steal from a bakery. One of them steals for profit because there's whatever, they want to make extra money for whatever reason. And one of them steals to feed his family. Are they both wrong? Absolutely. But the question is, what do they deserve in terms of punishment? The guy that needs to feed his family you would not expect that he would get the same kind of punishment as the person that's stealing for profit. And the same thing goes with violating somebody's rights. If you're going to violate somebody's rights to get information about a disaster that might occur where you can save people's lives, you're wrong for doing it. You're wrong for violating their rights. However, when it comes time for punishment, what is it that you should expect from society in terms of punishment? Should you expect the same kind of punishment as a person who is violating somebody's rights in order to keep them from testifying against you in a trial of some sort? No, obviously not. That's the issue. And that's where we get into this kind of a false dichotomy situation, is people conflate justice and ethics, and then you end up with this false dichotomy of, it's any which way you go looks like it's going to be a bad choice. Either you have to lie to somebody, or if you don't lie, disaster is going to happen. BS. You still have to make that decision and say, I'm going to go ahead and get this done. And yes, I know I'm doing wrong, but you know that you can expect a justice, that you're not going to get the same kind of punishment as somebody who has evil intent, so to speak. So, and then I also like the fact in this particular section that they're touching on determinism, and but what bothered me too was that they kind of, let's see here, and the compatibilism BS. It's kind of a way out for determinists, because true determinism says there's no free will. So now here he says, well, then we have a situation where we can give you therapy and give you drugs to change your motivations so that you'll be determined to act morally and lawfully instead. And that's not the way that determinism is said to work. You're said to work that you have no free will, and that you are determined by powers beyond your control. And change is therefore either unlikely or impossible. Because that's what free will is all about. Changing your, being able to change your mind. You decide, I'm going to go rob a bank, and then saying, deciding, no, that's not a good idea after all, so I'm not going to go ahead and do it. And plenty of people do that, and they do it without being forced with therapy and drugs to change. Some people do it on their own, and some people do it with spiritual guidance from God, etc. So, but I'm glad he touches on determinism, because that's one of the issues for today in terms of politics. Politicians justify the use of government, the heavy-handed use of government, because of determinism. Tobacco is a classic example. The left says that people only smoke because they're forced to by a power, big tobacco, beyond their control. So their reasoning is that big tobacco is this huge power, so we need a power that's at least as big as big tobacco, maybe even larger, to step in and force people to stop smoking, A, and B, to not start smoking in the first place. Provide, in other words, a bigger stick than the tobacco companies can. Be a bigger bully than the big tobacco companies. So that's where that kind of thing is. Again, philosophy is very relevant. Philosophy affects the culture. Culture then determines our politics. So when we come back, a few jokes, or a joke or two, from the New York City Cab Drivers Joke Book. Thank you very much. And let's see, the New York Cab Drivers Joke Book is written by Jim Peach, an actual New York City cab driver. And so let's see what we got here. Let's see. All right, let's try this one. Sidney Blumenthal, age 83, goes into the confessional at St. John's Cathedral. The priest asks him, "Have you anything to confess?" "Yes," says the old man. "My wife died 2 months ago. 2 days after she passed on, I met another woman. This woman is 22 years old. I've been sleeping with her every day since the day I met her. Sometimes we do it 2 or 3 times a day." "And how old are you?" said the priest. 83, Sidney replies. "Oh dear," says the priest. "Go home and say 10 Hail Marys." "I can't do that," says the old man. "I'm Jewish." "Then for God's sake, why are you telling me all this?" says the priest. The old man replies, "I'm telling everybody." Question: what do you call a Greek with 500 girlfriends? Answer: a shepherd. And on that note, we come to the end of another episode of The Drill. Thank you very much for listening, and have a great day.